Commander Zixthrax of the Galactic Consortium's Penal Division stood before the newly constructed maximum security prison, his three eyes blinking in rapid succession, a clear sign of pride for those familiar with Zorgonian body language. Not that anyone present could read Zorgonian body language, mind you. The rest of the gathered aliens just assumed he had some sort of weird eye spasm. Behold, Zixthrax's voice boomed through his universal translator, causing several of the smaller alien species to wince. The ultimate incarceration facility in the known universe, Fort Inescapable. A chorus of groans echoed through the assembled crowd. Really, muttered a Blobian diplomat, his gelatinous form rippling with disdain. That's the best name they could come up with. What's next? Prison face. Zixthrax, oblivious to the less than enthusiastic response, continued his speech. This state-of-the-art facility is designed to hold the most dangerous criminals from every corner of the galaxy. Its walls are forged from impenetrable neutronium alloy, its energy barriers powered by a captive singularity, and its guards, well, let's just say they make Terminators look like fluffy kittens. The assembled dignitaries nodded, impressed despite themselves. After all, they had collectively poured trillions of galactic credits into this project. It had better be impressive, or heads would roll, literally in the case of the Decapodians. But the true genius of Fort Inescapable, Zixthrax continued, his chest swelling with pride and a bit of indigestion from the celebratory feast earlier, lies in its ability to adapt to any species we throw at it. The prison's AI constantly analyzes the inmates, adjusting security measures to counter any potential escape attempts. A Venusian reporter raised a tentacle. Commander, what about the humans? We've heard rumors that they're particularly resourceful. Zixthrax let out a laugh that sounded like a cross between a donkey's bray and a garbage disposal choking on a spoon. Humans? Those primitive bipeds? Please, they barely made it off their own planet. What could they possibly do against the most advanced prison in the galaxy? Little did Zixthrax know, but at that very moment, in a holding cell deep within Fort Inescapable, a small group of human prisoners were already plotting their escape. Captain Jane Havoc Harper, former Space Force pilot turned intergalactic smuggler, sat on her bunk, idly tossing a small rubber ball against the cell wall. The ball, of course, had been MacGyvered from her standard issue to from her, a bit of her uniform, and what she swore was alien drool she'd found in the corner of her cell. So she said, catching the ball and turning to her cellmates, who's up for a little jailbreak. Private First Class Bobby Tinker Thompson, a scrawny kid with a mind like a supercomputer and the social skills of a particularly dense rock, looked up from the small pile of wires and circuits he'd been fiddling with. You can't be serious, Cap. This place is like Fort Knox, Area 51, and Azkaban had a baby, and that baby grew up to be a supervillain's lair. Dr. Samantha Doc Chen, the group's resident polymath and occasional pain in the ass, snorted. Please, Bobby, I've seen more secure facilities in a preschool. Did you notice how the guards' tentacles leave residue on the biometric scanners? Amateur hour. The fourth member of their motley crew, a mountain of a man known only as Brick, grunted in agreement. At least Jane assumed it was agreement. It might have been indigestion from the weird alien slop they'd been served for dinner. Jane grinned, a mischievous glint in her eye. Exactly, Doc, these aliens think they're so smart, but they've never dealt with good old-fashioned human ingenuity, or human stupidity, which is often just as effective. So what's the plan? Cap Bobby asked, his fingers still dancing over his jury-rigged gadget. Jane's grin widened. Oh, you know, the usual. Chaos, mayhem, and a healthy dose of what the hell were they thinking. Meanwhile, in the prison's control room, Junior Warden Claxthor was having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. It had started with his favorite tentacle getting caught in the automatic doors again, continued with discovering that the cafeteria had run out of his species-preferred nutrient slime, and was now culminating in a series of increasingly bizarre anomalies popping up all over his monitors. Sir, one of his underlings chittered nervously. We're detecting unusual activity in cell block H. Claxthor sighed, a sound reminiscent of a deflating balloon animal. Define unusual, ensign. This is a prison full of the galaxy's worst criminals. Usual is our bread and butter, or nutrient slime in my case. The ensign's exoskeleton paled slightly. Well, sir, it appears that the human prisoners have redecorated their cell. Claxthor blinked all 7 of his eyes in rapid succession. Redecorated? How in the name of the great cosmic squid did they manage that? And why is that a problem? They've turned their cell into what appears to be I believe the humans call it a disco, sir, complete with a rotating illumination sphere and rhythmic auditory vibrations. Claxthor felt a headache building behind his central eye cluster. And where, pray tell, did they get the materials for this disco? The ensign's mandibles clicked nervously. We're not entirely sure, sir, but the energy output from their cell has increased by 500%, and several of the guards have reported an irresistible urge to, and I quote, boogie down. Claxthor made a mental note to review the prison's contraband policies, and possibly to look up what boogie down meant. Fine increased security on cell block H. He was interrupted by another alarm blaring from a different console. Now what, he growled. Sir, we're detecting anomalies in the waste recycling system. It appears that someone has. Well, sir, they've turned it into a water park. Claxthor's headache intensified. A what? A recreational facility involving large volumes of water twisting tubes and high-velocity descent, sir. The prisoners in cell block C are quite enjoying it, apparently. Claxthor made another mental note to fire whoever had approved teaching the prisoners about Earth culture. Shut it down. Now, and someone get me a nutrient slime smoothie, extra thick. Back in cell block H, Jane and her team were putting the finishing touches on their master plan. Bobby had somehow managed to convert their toilet into a surprisingly powerful computer terminal. While Doc had brewed up a concoction that she swore would make those alien bastards trip balls, Jane didn't know what that meant exactly. But she trusted Doc's scientific expertise, even if it did occasionally border on mad science. All right, team, Jane said, gathering them around, here's the plan. Bobby, you're going to hack into the prison's mainframe and cause as much chaos as possible. Doc, you're on chemical warfare. Deploy your special brew through the ventilation system. Brick, she paused, looking at the massive man who was currently bench pressing his bunk. Just do what you do best, big guy. Brick grunted and nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. And me, Jane continued, cracking her knuckles. I'll be providing the distraction. Time to show these aliens why humans are the galaxy's ultimate party animals. With a wink and a nod, the team sprang into action. Bobby's fingers flew across his makeshift keyboard, lines of alien code streaking across the screen faster than the eye could follow. Doc carefully poured her mysterious concoction into the cell's air vent, the liquid seeming to evaporate almost instantly into a shimmering, rainbow-hued mist. Brick continued to exercise, but with even more enthusiasm than before. And Jane sauntered up to the cell's energy barrier, a wicked grin on her face and a gleam in her eye that would have sent any sane being running for the hills. Hey, guard, she called out, her voice dripping with honey and just a hint of playful malice. I want to see a magic trick. In the control room, Claxthor was seriously considering early retirement, or possibly faking his own death and starting a new life as a hermit on some backwater planet. Anything would be better than dealing with this madness. Sir, yet another underling reported we're receiving reports of unusual behavior from the guards in cell block H. Claxthor didn't even bother to look up from the mountain of incident reports on his desk. Define unusual and please, for the love of all that's holy, tell me it doesn't involve more human recreational activities. The underling shifted uncomfortably. Well, sir, it seems that the guards are dancing. Claxthor's head snapped up so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. Dancing? Our elite, highly trained, genetically engineered super soldiers are dancing. Yes, sir. And singing, sir. Something about staying alive in night fever. We're not entirely sure what it means, but it seems to be highly contagious. Even the prisoners are joining in. Claxthor's headache had evolved into a full-blown migraine. How? How is this happening? This facility was designed to be impregnable, unbreakable, escape-proof. The underling shrugged, a gesture it had picked up from watching too many human prisoners. It appears, sir, that we may have overlooked one crucial factor in our calculations. And what Claxthor growled, might that be? Human unpredictability, sir, and their inexplicable ability to turn any situation, no matter how dire, into a party. Meanwhile, in the bowels of Fort Inescapable, Bobby's hacking was paying off in spades. The prison's AI, designed to adapt to any escape attempt, found itself woefully unprepared for the sheer chaos of human creativity. Doors opened and closed at random, sprinkler systems activated in some sections while others experienced sudden localized gravity failures. In the cafeteria, the food synthesizers went haywire, spewing out an endless stream of what appeared to be multicolored spaghetti and meatballs. Bobby whispered, his eyes never leaving the screen. You wouldn't believe the shoddy coding on this thing. It's like they never considered someone might try to hack it using a repurposed toilet and a toothbrush battery. Jane, who was in the middle of teaching a group of very confused alien guards the Macarena, grinned. That's because they've never met a human engineer with too much time on their hands and a grudge against authority. Keep it up, Tinker. In another part of the prison, Doc's chemical concoction was working its magic. Guards and prisoners alike found themselves experiencing what could only be described as a psychedelic journey through time and space, complete with swirling colors, profound revelations about the nature of reality, and an inexplicable craving for Earth snack foods. I can taste the color purple, one guard exclaimed, his tentacles waving in patterns that would make a geometry professor weep. That's nothing, his partner replied, staring in wonder at his own appendages. I just discovered the meaning of life in my elbow, or whatever the equivalent of an elbow is for our species. And Brick? Well, Brick was doing what Brick did best, which, at the moment, involved using a makeshift battering ram formerly known as his bunk to smash through walls with gleeful abandon. Brick Smashy bellowed, his voice echoing through the corridors and sending aliens scurrying in all directions. That's right, Big Guy, Jane called out encouragingly. Channel your inner cool aid man. As chaos reigned supreme throughout Fort Inescapable, Jane couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. This right here was humanity at its finest. Faced with an impossible situation, they hadn't just survived, they'd turned the whole damn thing into the galaxy's biggest, weirdest party. In the control room, Claxthor had given up all pretense of maintaining order. He sat in his command chair, surrounded by blaring alarms and flashing screens, a look of utter defeat on his face. Sir, one of the few remaining functional underlings reported, "The humans have breached the main gates." They're leaving, sir. Claxthor didn't even have the energy to be surprised anymore. How? How did they manage that? The main gates are secured by a quantum-locked, trillion-digit passcode that changes every nanosecond. The underling shrugged again. They didn't crack the code, sir. They just convinced the gates to open. Convinced. How does one convince an inanimate object? Well, sir, according to the security footage, they told the gate it was a good boy and asked if it wanted a treat. The gate's AI apparently found this logic irrefutable and opened immediately. Claxthor buried his face in his tentacles. Of course it did. Why not? It's not like anything else has made sense today. Just then, the main view screen flickered to life, revealing the grinning face of Captain Jane Harper. "Hey, Warden," she said cheerfully, waving at the camera. "Just wanted to say thanks for the hospitality. We had a blast, really. But you know how it is, places to go, galaxies to see, laws to break. I'd say better luck next time, but let's be honest, there probably won't be a next time." She winked, and behind her, Claxthor could see the rest of the human prisoners piling into what appeared to be a cobbled-together spaceship. A spaceship that, if he wasn't mistaken, was made primarily out of cafeteria trays, recycled toilet paper, and what looked suspiciously like the prison's main reactor core. "Oh, and one more thing," Jane added, her grin turning slightly manic. "You might want to evacuate the station, like now. Remember that disco ball we made? Turns out it makes a pretty decent fusion bomb when you swap out the glitter for some deuterium. Who knew, right? Anyway, toodles." The screen went dark, leaving Claxthor staring at his own reflection. He blinked once, twice, then reached for the station-wide comm system. "Attention all personnel and prisoners," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "This is not a drill. Please proceed to the escape pods in an orderly fashion. And if anyone needs me, I'll be in my quarters writing my resignation letter and possibly my memoir." Working title: "I Survived the Human Invasion, and All I Got Was This Lucy T-shirt." As alarms blared and aliens of all species scrambled for the exits, Claxthor couldn't help but chuckle. It was either that or cry, and he wasn't entirely sure his species was physiologically capable of tears. "Humans," he muttered, shaking his head as he made his way to his personal escape pod. Note to self: next time, just leave them alone. It's safer for everyone involved. Light years away, aboard their makeshift spacecraft, which Jane had dubbed the SS Jailbreak, the human escapees were celebrating their victory. "I still can't believe that worked," Bobby said, shaking his head in disbelief as he piloted the ship through the asteroid field. "I mean, sure, I'm a genius, but even I didn't think we'd actually pull it off." Doc, who was busy trying to figure out how to turn their fusion reactor disco ball into a proper engine, snorted. "Please." As if there was ever any doubt. "We're human improvising our way out of certain doom is practically our species' hobby." Brick, who had taken it upon himself to act as the ship's living shock absorber by bracing against the walls during particularly rough maneuvers, grunted in agreement. Jane, sprawled in what passed for the captain's chair, a repurposed alien toilet that was surprisingly comfortable, couldn't wipe the grin off her face. "You know what the best part is? We didn't just escape, we gave every other prisoner in that joint a chance at freedom too. Imagine the chaos we left behind. It'll be years before the Galactic Consortium recovers from this PR nightmare." Speaking of nightmares, Bobby piped up, his eyes never leaving the makeshift control panel. "We might have a small problem. You know how we kind of borrowed the prison's main reactor core." The others nodded, their expressions a mix of pride and mild concern. "Well," Bobby continued, his voice taking on that particular tone that usually preceded either a brilliant solution or a catastrophic explosion, "it turns out that these things aren't exactly designed for interstellar travel. We're pushing it way past its normal operating parameters, and it's getting a bit tetchy." "Defy." Doc raised an eyebrow. "Define tetchy, Tinker. Are we talking might need a tune-up soon tetchy, or going to explode and turn us all into very stylish space dust tetchy?" Bobby chewed his lip. Somewhere between angry cat in a bathtub and supernova with a hangover, Jane sighed, though her grin never faltered. "Well, gang, looks like we're not out of the woods yet. Any ideas?" Doc's eyes lit up with that special gleam that usually preceded either a groundbreaking discovery or an impromptu lesson in why certain chemicals should never be mixed. "Actually, I might have something. Remember that psychedelic compound I whipped up back in the prison?" The others nodded, their expressions a mix of fond remembrance and mild terror. "Well," Doc continued, her fingers already dancing over a jury-rigged control panel, "if my calculations are correct, and let's face it, they usually are, I might be able to modify it to act as a stabilizing agent for the reactor core. It'll be like giving our temperamental power source a galactic chill pill." Jane raised an eyebrow. You want to get our reactor high. Doc, that's either the most brilliant or the most insane idea I've ever heard. So basically it's par for the course with you. Let's do it. And as Doc set to work, Jane turned her attention to navigating their ragtag crew through the perils of deep space. It wasn't easy flying a ship held together by spit space tape and what she strongly suspected was alien snot, but if anyone could do it, it was her. "All right, team," she announced, her voice carrying that perfect blend of authority and camaraderie that had made her such an effective leader. "We're not out of this yet. But remember, we're human. We've faced down alien invasions, survived cosmic horrors, and even managed to create a decent cup of coffee in 0G. A little thing like certain death isn't going to stop us now." As if on cue, the ship gave a violent lurch, sending everyone scrambling for handholds. Cap," Bobby called out, his fingers flying over his console. "We've got company." "Looks like the Galactic Consortium didn't appreciate our jailbreak as much as we'd hoped." Jane's grin, if anything, grew wider. "Well, now that's just rude. After all the redecorating we did for them. Brick, honey, be a dear and man the weapon system, would you?" Brick's answering grin was downright terrifying. With surprising grace for someone his size, he lumbered over to a console that looked like it had been cobbled together from a microwave, a toaster, and what might have once been a particularly angry blender. "Brick make boom?" he asked, his meaty fingers hovering over the controls with unexpected delicacy. Jane nodded. "Brick make big boom. But try not to blow up anything too important, okay? We're freedom fighters now, not wanton destroyers." As Brick set about targeting their pursuers with an enthusiasm that was both heartening and slightly worrying, Doc's voice rang out from the engine room. "I've done it. The reactor's stabilized. We should have enough power to outrun these jokers and make it to the nearest neutral space station. Fantastic work." Doc, Jane called back. "Bobby, plot us a course. Somewhere nice and out of the way. I hear the Andromeda Galaxy is lovely this time of year." Bobby's fingers danced over his console. "On it, Cap, but you do realize Andromeda is about 2.5 million light years away, right?" Jane waved a hand dismissively. Details. We've got a ship that runs on disco power and psychedelic drugs. I'm pretty sure the laws of physics are more like guidelines for us at this point." As the SS Jailbreak shot through space, leaving a trail of confused alien pursuers and the occasional explosion in its wake, Jane couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. This right here was humanity at its finest, faced with impossible odds, armed with nothing but their wits, a few scraps of alien tech, and an indomitable spirit. They hadn't just survived, they'd thrived. "You know," she mused, more to herself than to her crew, "I bet those aliens are going to think twice before underestimating humans again. We might not have the most advanced technology or the strongest bodies, but by God, we've got something they'll never understand." An unhealthy disregard for personal safety, Bobby quipped. "The ability to turn any situation into a party," Doc suggested. "Brick smash, good," Brick offered. Jane laughed, a sound of pure joy and triumph. "All of the above, my friends. All of the above. But most importantly, we've got the one thing that will always see us through. The human spirit. That special blend of curiosity, creativity, and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness that's taken us from caves to the stars." As the SS Jailbreak disappeared into the vast expanse of space, leaving behind a thoroughly confused and slightly singed galactic consortium, one thing was certain. The legend of the humans who escaped the inescapable prison would be told and retold across the galaxy for eons to come. And somewhere out there, in the depths of space, a small ship held together by hope, duct tape, and good old human ingenuity continued its journey, its destination. Anywhere and everywhere. Its mission: to seek out new life, new civilizations, and to boldly go where no sensible being would ever consider going. Because that, after all, is the human way. Epilogue. In a dimly lit bar on a backwater planet at the edge of the galaxy, a group of alien beings huddled around a table, their voices hushed and their eyes or equivalent sensory organs darting nervously. "Did you hear?" one of them whispered, its tentacles quivering with excitement. "They say a group of humans escaped from Fort Inescapable." "Impossible," another scoffed, "though its bioluminescent patches flickered with uncertainty. That place was designed to hold the worst criminals in the galaxy. No one could escape from there." A third alien, its crystalline form shimmering in the low light, leaned in. "It's true. I heard it from my cousin's roommate's symbiote. Not only did they escape, but they turned the whole prison into some kind of party." The first alien nodded vigorously. "Yes, they call it a disco apparently. It involves rhythmic movement, bright lights, and something called getting down with your bad self." A fourth alien, who had been quietly nursing a drink that smoked ominously, finally spoke up. "I've encountered humans before," it said, its voice a low rumble. "Crazy beings, the lot of them. But there's no denying their effectiveness." The others turned to look at the speaker, their curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" the crystalline being asked. The fourth alien sighed, a sound like grinding boulders. "Humans have this quality about them. They don't just overcome obstacles, they befriend them, redesign them, or turn them into musical instruments. I once saw a human talk a black hole into reversing its polarity. The others stared in disbelief. It's true, the alien continued. They called it diplomacy, but it looked an awful lot like insanity to me. Effective insanity, mind you, but insanity nonetheless. As the group continued to discuss the latest human exploits in hushed, awe-filled tones, none of them noticed the hooded figure sitting in the corner booth. If they had, they might have seen the hint of a smile on a distinctly human face. Captain Jane Harper took another sip of her drink, which she'd managed to convince the bartender was just soda, despite its tendency to occasionally defy gravity, and listened with amusement to the tall tales already springing up around their escape. Well, boys, she murmured to herself, thinking of her crew currently engaged in what they assured her was totally normal human behavior elsewhere in the spaceport. Looks like we've started quite the legend. She raised her glass in a silent toast. To human ingenuity, to the spirit of adventure, and to whatever insane scheme they'd undoubtedly stumble into next. After all, the galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers alike, and where there were rules to be broken, systems to be outsmarted, and impossible odds to be defied, you could be sure to find humans right in the thick of it, because that's just what humans do. They explore, they adapt, they overcome, and they do it all with a song in their hearts, a joke on their lips, and a plan so crazy it just might work. The universe wouldn't know what hit it.